remember the site of the former Catholic church located on the southern side of White Hart Lane, close to its eastern extent, its eastern junction with Castle Street. It's shown edged red on the site in front of you.
Richard, can I interrupt you a minute? I ought to declare a non-pecuniary interest in citing because one or maybe two of the potential developers are known to me, I think. I'm not sure somehow the place seems to change hands regularly. Okay, that's fine.
So the site is edged red on the screen in front of you. The existing church building, where my cursor is at the moment. To the south are located 6 properties that back onto the site, located in York Gardens, and running between York Gardens and White Hart Lane along the western side of the site is a public footpath, where my cursor is here. And on the eastern side of the site, Cobham Hall, which again fronts onto White Hart Lane. The existing site layout is on the screen in front of you. As I said, the existing church building is located in the southwestern corner of the site. Access to the site currently is only really viable via one vehicular access in the northeastern corner of the site, but there is a second access which, when the property was used as a church, was in regular use in the north western corner of the site here, and there's 2 drop curbs either side to facilitate those access points. In between them there are some build-outs, traffic calming measures to slow traffic passing down White Hart Lane. The proposed scheme is the redevelopment of the site following the demolition of the church with 8 new homes. 6 of these houses would front White Hart Lane. In the arrangement shown in front of you, a pair of semi-detached houses in the northeastern corner, and then a terrace of 4. An access point just to the east of the existing build-outs, which I mentioned a moment ago, which would remain in place as they are at the moment, would facilitate access to the rear of the site, where another pair of semi-detached houses would be built. In total, there would be 13 parking spaces in a rear courtyard to the rear. 2 of those spaces, numbers 12 and 13, would be allocated for the sole use of plot 8, and the remainder would be given to use on an unallocated basis for the remainder of the properties. One important feature of the site, which obviously is pointed out on this site plan because it's in colour, the green hedgerow that surrounds the site on practically all of its boundaries, in particular on the southern side and the eastern side, western side, where it's substantial, it's quite overgrown, and I'll show you some photographs in a moment just to point that out. Chairman, I'll run through the detailed drawings here, the elevation drawings that I've got for you. This is a street scene drawing showing the proposed development in context with the existing buildings along White Hart Lane. So I pointed out Cobham Hall a moment ago. That's on the left-hand side of this street scene drawing, and the existing semi-detached houses at number 12 and presumably number 14 here, White Hart Lane on the right-hand side, and in between you've got the new pair of semi-detached houses and the row of 4 terraces which would front onto White Hart Lane. Plots 1 and 2, those semi-detached houses fronting White Hart Lane on the screen in front of you at the moment. And here's the terrace of 4. I should point out the terrace of 4 here, from the front elevation there's a couple of Velux roof lights to provide second floor accommodation to plots 4 and 5, and moving to the rear again a couple of roof lights and a couple of dormer windows also to facilitate that accommodation in the roof space. Moving to the rear, plots 7 and 8 located facing out onto the rear courtyard parking area. And now, Chairman, I'll show you just 3 or 4 photographs that I took of the site as it currently is. These photographs were taken a couple of days ago. So this photograph is taken looking westwards along White Hart Lane. On the right-hand side, just out of the picture, is the pub, the co-op, recently closed, and the 2 recently constructed houses that were built in I think it was the pub garden. Beyond that, some of the older houses are along the northern side of White Hart Lane. On the left-hand side of the picture, you've got Cobham Hall here, and then the application site just beyond where the bus stop is here, and you can see the boundary hedgerow. Moving further around, you see that boundary hedgerow a bit clearer. You can see the extent of it, its height, its coverage. And moving around, looking back towards that bus shelter that I just pointed out a moment ago. So here's the application site, here's the public footpath where my cursor is, that runs along the western side of the site. And again, you can see the extent of the boundary treatment at the moment. Here's one of the existing accesses which would be stopped up. And here's where the row of 4 terraces would be, and of course here's the build house in the road which would remain in that position. Chairman, I don't have much more to add other than to say that yesterday I received a hedge maintenance plan from the applicant. It's not arrived in time, unfortunately, for me to provide you with a written update, but I'll verbally, I'm quite happy to explain what that maintenance plan covers. It effectively covers how the boundary hedgerows would be maintained, how they would be retained in the first instance following the development. And if I just quickly go back to the site plan where the hedgerows are shown, I can explain what the intention is. The intention is to retain as much of the hedgerow as possible and thin it out and reduce it in height where appropriate. What the hedge maintenance programme explains is that the hedgerow along the western boundary is to be reduced to a height of 2 metres and a width of 1 metre, whereas the hedgerow on the southern side would be reduced to 5 metres in height and 2 metres in width, so a bit more substantial there. Now, whilst that's an indication of the initial treatment of the boundary, so the initial reduction in height of the boundary hedge, there's no detail about how that would be retained in the future. So, I mean, if it was felt that it was important to retain those boundary hedgerows, you could do by imposing an additional planning condition if you felt that was appropriate. In that respect, I think, giving this some thought, I think there's a bit of a balance to be struck between maintaining these hedgerows at a suitable height to maintain privacy, but also to make sure that they're not too high so that you're affecting the enjoyment of the garden areas, in particular plot 8 here. What I would say is that members might want to give some thought as to whether a 5 metre boundary hedgerow along here would, in the future, perhaps lead to some difficulties with the owners of plot 8 wanting to reduce that hedge in height. So that's the only additional thing in addition to the content of the report. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions after the deputation.